Right. So at the National Center for Combustion R&D, we are primarily working on all forms of modern or future mobility. I am personally leading the e-plane company, which is into making our taxis for the future, and it could also be air ambulances, for example. But fundamentally, small mobility that is going to be aerial, so it will be vertical takeoff and landing aircrafts that we are doing, starting with the two-seater. But prior to that, we are also actually making fairly large cargo drones, which are fundamentally planes, but they are classified under drones. So that's the aerial segment. We also have Agnikul Cosmos that is making 3D printed rockets to go to space and launch satellites. And we have a satellite company that does called Galaxy that does Earth observation satellites by combining night vision as well as day vision cameras with deep learning algorithms on board with edge computing and so on. We have Aerostovelos that is making a micro gas turbine to power trucks and long distance buses with a fuel flexible capability so that people can actually use whatever fuels that they can find on the road, all the way up to hydrogen through natural gas and diesel that's available today and so on. And we have X2 Fuels that is trying to convert municipal solid waste into crude oil, and that crude oil could actually be used by Aerostovelos itself. And finally, more recently, we have Nutrace that's spun out of NCCRD that is into making green hydrogen with membraneless micro modular electrolyzers. Yeah, acceptance is always one of the important cornerstones of what we do. So we have to do something that gels with the rest of the society and take it from where it is to the next level. So if you look at our taxis, our approach is to make sure that we land on very accessible places and price it at very accessible levels. So it could be like rooftops of apartments, it could be rooftops of malls and parking lot decks, or metro stations and so on. So it should be fairly accessible to a lot of people, and it should be from where they are to where they want to go, and it should be like a mobile app that they can hail this taxi and so on. If you look at the Aerostovelos engine, strictly speaking, it can actually take even things like biogas, syngas, all of those things in rural areas, but we are actually conscious of what will be the current supply chain that allows for fuel to be available to the drivers or any of those people, and therefore we are primarily targeting a diesel, natural gas to hydrogen. Maybe in between there could be ammonia or methanol, whatever is available, on the go. And when we produce the crude oil, we will have to integrate with the current the crude oil system, or figure out how we can actually dispense the crude oil for trucks that are using these kinds of engines, or double up the engine with the fuel itself as a supply chain that we will have to establish. So these are things we will have to actually worry about how people will accept, so that it's accessible to them, they know exactly how to go get it, and so on, and it's not actually sitting in the lab or some kind of a pilot plant and stuff. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Technology is not a big challenge in India anymore. So it's something that we are not doing anything very different. In fact, we can do even space stuff in India, or nuclear, whatever it is, right? So the top end of technology is available in India, right? There is not much an end that we don't do in India. So technology is actually not the challenge. I think the challenge is actually the mindsets of the people. There is still a vast population of people, except for the younger generation, which thinks that a lot of things can't be done in India, right? So our problem is to actually change that. That's actually the biggest problem. Well, when the product happens, everybody will change their mind. So until the product happens, so what do I need? I need money. I need investors. So, and investors are actually my age group people, right? And they have a very pathetic mindset that these things can't be done in India. That is the target audience for me. Some of them are futuristic, and some of them are interested in these things and so on. So, but it's actually pretty hard, because some things are actually more like a fad, like space technology is a fad because Elon Musk is doing it, and so on. So they will actually put money into it and all that stuff. Some other things, they think that the government will take a much longer time to embrace and all that first stuff. So they have a problem. Some things are truly taking a lot of time and a lot of money, like a Hyperloop thing I don't think any investor is interested in actually putting in money anytime in the near term, and so on. So there are different shades of fundraising, prospects that we go through with different products and projects that we are working on. The cargo part, I think, is something that we'll probably be doing sometime later this year and early next year. Again, it will actually go through multiple user trials, and people like logistics companies will want to warm up to the idea. So it will be ones and twos of flights before it becomes tens and twenties of flights, and before it becomes hundreds and 200s of flights, right? So, and that ramp up is expected starting later this year to maybe through 2024 next year, through next year. So I think by the end of next year, if we have succeeded in about like 100 planes or so, I think we have done a marvelous job, in my opinion. Right? The passenger side requires a lot more safety considerations. So there is a very stringent certification process that we will go through with the DGCA, and that will take about 2 years. So even after we make the plane by the end of this year, it'll be the first prototype, and then we will have 2, 3, 4 prototypes through 2024 and fly all of them and go through testing, and the certification process should actually be going through till about middle of 2025. So we expect that sometime in 2025 we can try to commercially launch this. And so the way the certification process goes through, we also will get like some kind of an initial operational clearance, and that could be away from urban areas. It could be somewhere in mountainous areas, like for example parts of Kerala, or the parts of Tamil Nadu where we have these hilly regions around Coimbatore or Kodaikanal or any of those places in this part of the country, but similarly in the northern part of the country and lots of such places. So once people actually start seeing these things happen, then we will actually tighten the requirements for what it takes to fly over cities and so on. So all of that transition should actually happen in 2025. And maybe by 2026 we should actually see our skies busy with these planes, is the hope. Waste to crude is actually a very interesting project. We got funding for doing a 5 ton per day plant, and the business model there is actually not about making crude at all. It's about making the plant. So our sale is actually not going to be crude. The sale is going to be on the plant, and whoever is actually buying the plant is the one who will be making the crude and selling it to offset the money that they have put into the plant. People who are actually buying the plant will buy it primarily from a waste management point of view, because that's a huge headache for people who are generating and having to manage waste. But in the process, if they are actually getting back some crude, they will be pretty, and they can actually sell it in the open market and so on. They will be much happier because they are getting some return on investment. So our goal is to actually be able to identify players like walled campuses. It could be like let's say a Sipcot industrial estate, or a export processing zone, or it could be academic institutions, like for example IIT Madras is one of those, or any PSUs or any other factories, so which are generating waste at the level of about let's say 3 to 5 tons per day, and we can actually sell maybe about 3-4 units to make enough money for me to make the 10 ton per day, and sell about 3-4 units of 10 ton per day to make enough money for me to actually think about making the 100 ton per day, and so on. Maybe not 3-4 units, but at that level it will actually be better, because there are a lot of people generating a lot of waste, right? So at 10 ton per day I can actually start targeting like tier 3 municipalities and all that stuff. So there is actually a lot more in number that I can target, because for me to find somebody who is generating only 5 ton per day is not so easy. Right? They will typically give it away to municipalities, whereas at the level of municipalities, it's possible to think about a 10 ton per day kind of thing, right? So where I can sell about 10 such plants, establish them over there, and then get margins. With that, we can set up the 100 ton per day, and then we start selling the 100 ton per day in order to make the 1000 ton per day. So that will go on till about 2030. In all these things that we do, actually, government plays a very key role in just allowing us to do what we want to do. Right, so government actually plays the role of a regulator to begin with, and also in some cases at some different levels also a customer, right? So for example, the launch vehicles, the government actually is now enabling us to launch. Until about 2-3 years back, there were no regulations for launching private rockets out of India, but now that's possible, and the government is actually supporting the whole thing. ISRO is actually acting as a very big catalyst in allowing this to happen. Similarly, on the electric planes, the government will actually have to support us all the way through to getting this to be a reality, and not only certifying the plane but also certifying landing spaces, certifying the charging stations. A lot of safety standards have to be standardized and regulated. All of these things will have to be done by the government. And similarly, when you're now making crude oil, we are actually competing with the government against them importing crude oil and processing it through government-owned PSUs and so on, right? So we are basically telling them, stop doing all that, we will do it for you, right? So they will have to accept that in the first place, or they will actually have to get their PSUs to do this with us and so on. So we'll have to see how all those things work. But fundamentally, my wife asks these questions like, why are you doing what the government is supposed to do? But well, my answer is I'm helping the government, so the government is expected to help me.